Okay, with us here in Lagos is the publisher Energy Times, Kayode Ekundayo, and we're expected to be joined from our Port Harcourt studio, former corporate communications manager, Port Harcourt Electricity Distribution Company, Jonah Iboma.
He's there already.
Okay.
Jonah, it's good to have you join us right now. Good morning.
Good morning. Thank you very much.
Okay, let's start this way. I wonder if you heard that report that talked about some power components being stranded at the ports for upwards of 8 years.
Yes.
I wonder what you make of that.
Yes, actually, it's not a new thing. The abandonment started during Yaradua period. You remember during the probe into the power sector by the National Assembly, resulting from almost 2-3 years lack of activities in the power sector. That is one of the results you have just seen. We have almost 1,000 container of that at the port.
Wow.
So, according to the minister, as at 2 weeks ago, he said they have been able to negotiate 400 of that. So, we are expecting that more of this will be discharged and brought to the mainstream in terms of the activities using during that time. You see, when there are challenges in the sector, it's not that the government is not proactive, but the attitude of Nigerians towards this. If you look at that challenge we had during the probe, it was just a wasted years. And you could see that there was no result at that particular period. The whole system was stagnant, and we wasted a lot of money on probing unnecessary things. At the end of the day, we lost a lot of contracts, we lost a lot of money, because at that time, there are contracts awarded, and people were bringing in equipment, some were left abroad, but because of the probe, people were afraid, and the system was just left there. And some of these contractors brought the equipment, but because of that probe, they couldn't proceed to transmit some of these things to the power plant. They couldn't negotiate their way into installing this equipment. So that is the genesis of the crisis we have, and that is what we are even nursing today.
All right, let me bring in Jonah Iboma here from our Port Harcourt studio. Jonah, good morning. It's good to have you join us. Now, knowing that there has been close to 1,000 containers of electricity equipment at the port for so many years, abandoned there one way or the other, when we know that power is the greatest challenge, or the lack of it is the greatest challenge Nigeria has, from what experts have said. Now, if we take a look at what the real reasons are for abandoning this, can you enlighten us as to what these reasons may be for leaving this at the ports?
Well, I think that the government actually should have told Nigerians the reasons for the abandonment of this equipment at the port, especially at a time that the country has made a lot of effort towards improving power supply to customers, to users in the country. But I do know that, yes, there were glitches or hitches as to ensuring that these things are cleared at the ports, because reports have had it over the months, over the years, that look, these items, they have been abandoned at the port, and the government was doing little or nothing about them. But I think whatever the reasons may be, the important thing now is that these equipments have been cleared and they'll be moved to the locations where they will be used, and that will be better for Nigerians at the end of the day. So I think we should look away from the past and begin to actually anticipate better power supply going forward.
Well, some would say if you don't, take a look behind you, you might lose sight of the direction exactly that you want to go in. And let me stay with you, Jonah. Precisely March 31st this year, Nigeria came to an all-time low when it comes to power generation, 0 megawatts. That has never happened in the history of Nigeria. And in about 17 years, this government, various governments have spent over 4 trillion naira on trying to revive the power sector. can we justify all of these expenses? And for some reason, nobody has been put behind bars or taken responsibility for the state we are in right now.
Well, let me start with the issue of zero power generation. That actually is the result of system failure. It's not, and that is within the national grid itself. But that does not mean that the country actually absolutely experienced zero power supply, because there is power supply still from other independent power plants that are not fed into the grid. But that aside, I think that given the amount of resources the government has committed to improving power sector in Nigeria, it is high time we begin to actually see a marked improvement in power. But I believe that for that to happen, a number of things must come together. The transmission system must improve drastically, because that constitutes a major problem today. Even if we generate all the power that is required in this country, as long as the transmission network remains in the state it is today, that power will not get to Nigerians. So it's important that we improve that quickly. But in addition to that, there's need for us to improve our distribution networks, which I believe the distribution companies are already doing. A lot of investment is going into that. And I believe with the metering program, the enumeration program that is also going on, Nigerians will have improved services within a few months from now. So it's good that those equipment have been moved, like I said, but the transmission system needs to improve, which is where I think a lot of investment is required going forward.
Okay, let me come to you, Kayode, in here. He said Jonah just said that with the metering system, power supply could improve in the coming months. But even if we have meters available for all Nigerians, does it really translate into, because right now we have areas where there are meters, prepaid meters here and there, but they still don't have light. How will that translate into having power supply?
Okay, thank you. Let me quickly talk about what he asked. And please, if I forget, just remind me of your question. You see, March is not the only time we have zero generation. I can tell you last week, we witnessed 2 system collapse. Twice, Thursday, I think Tuesday and Thursday, there was 0 megawatts last week. And now, between January and last week, we have had 20 system collapse. And that is the highest since 2009. This is fact. Highest since 2009. You should ask, why are we having this consistent system collapsing? I can tell you that it is time for government now to be looking beyond gas. We know there are challenges, there are militancy in the Niger Delta. We know that there is a crisis in terms of non-payment, forest challenges and all those things. But I think government should be looking beyond the gas problem. We should now be looking at the activities of the GENCOs and the distribution companies. Now, because if we look at how this system are collapsing, last week, we have had 20 system collapse. And that is the highest since 2009. This is fact. Highest since 2009. You should ask, why are we having this consistent system collapsing? I can tell you that it is time for government now to be looking beyond gas. We know there are challenges, there are militancy in the Niger Delta. We know that there is a crisis in terms of non-payment, forest challenges and all those things. But I think government should be looking beyond the gas problem. We should now be looking at the activities of the GENCOs and the distribution companies. Now, because if we look at how this system are collapsing, you will be wondering, is it because people are not picking gas? Is it because people deliberately not even doing what they're supposed to be doing? We know what is going on. Now, I can tell you that within the last 3 weeks, we've not had any bombing of vandalized pipeline. But I can tell you that until yesterday, and I think until yesterday and weekends, we got 2 bombing. And within the last 3 weeks, we were expecting there should be a stable power supply. Unfortunately, we couldn't. Now we had 2 system collapse within 1 week, and you could know the implication of that the whole system was trying to black out for 5 hours. So it's a lot of implication for us. So I'm saying that government should look beyond gas shortages and look to even the activities of DISCO and the GENCO companies. Now, as to your question, now even some distribution companies now, they are saying that they are not even going ahead with the metering. And I can tell you that they said because of the forex that they don't have the money to buy from the manufacturing company, and even the manufacturing companies are complaining that they couldn't meet up because there is high cost of procuring forex.
But don't we have, according to Fashola, the minister himself, he did talk to the DISCOs to patronize locally manufactured meters.
The local manufacturer are having challenges of procuring forex, enough forex to procure some of this equipment. They are not manufacturing locally. So all these things depends from the international manufacturing company. We only assemble all these things in Nigeria. So whatever we want to charge, whatever they want to cost, is still coming from abroad. So the challenge is still that we cannot achieve 100% metering. And you could see Ikeja distribution company have said that right now we cannot continue with the metering because they could not afford it now. But they will make the estimation reasonable, and they will meter all the distribution transformer in order to not to overloaded or overburden the estimated customer. And to me, I think for now, if you can endure and they make you, they go ahead with what they said, and we have a reasonable. I can tell you the bill they gave to my house this week is 2,000 naira. So if they can go ahead and do that, I think it's reasonable. Because even this month,
2,000 is reasonable for the average Nigerian every week?
Bill of 2,000 naira. And I can tell you that
Okay.
because there was no reasonable power supply.
Okay.
And they saw it, and they know that if they bill excessively, people could protest against that.
All right, so the bill should be commensurate to the power that is supplied.
Yeah,
All right, let's go on a break, and then we come back to discuss this. Stay with us on TVC Breakfast.
Did you cut off the advert?
So they come back, they are coming back.
Okay.
Once they come back, I see that back and preaching.
All right, if you're just joining us, you're watching TVC Breakfast, and on this segment we are discussing Nigeria's declining power supply. And Nigerians are making a lot of, they are complaining, and they have lots of questions to ask as far as this is concerned. And we have here in the studio a publisher, Energy Times, Kayode Ekundayo, and we have from our Port Harcourt studio the former corporate communications manager, Port Harcourt Electricity Distribution Company, Jonah Iboma. Now, Jonah, let me come to you on this. Kayode in the studio just told us about several system collapse that have taken place here and there. Can you give us an idea of what leads to total system collapse sometimes, the way it is witnessed?
Well, thank you for that question. That's more of a technical question, which engineers are best suited to answer. But from what we know, really, we operate a national grid. We operate a national grid, and that means that, look, the entire network is interconnected. And so if there's a breach, actually, from the National Control Center, which is in somewhere in Oyo State there, that actually means that you have a situation whereby power cannot be sent to the distribution companies, and that means power will not get to the end users. So, and there are several reasons why that can actually happen. It's not because the power plants are not producing. Power plants are producing, but it's not possible to actually get the power to the end users, to the distribution companies, for them to now distribute to customers, to users. And that has to do with an issue that I think the transmission company has to answer, and the National Control Center. They need to look at their networks and so on, explain actually properly. But I know that it has to do with the transmission system itself failing. When the transmission system fails, that is actually what leads to the national the system collapse that we have, that now impacts customers. Now, this has been happening very consistently, especially this year, and I think government actually needs to look into that and find a lasting solution to it, because it doesn't augur well that for a country you have a country of about 180 million, 200 million people, you have this issue continuing.
Yeah, of course, indeed, and I wonder what government really needs to do, but we'll come to that. Let me stay with you, Jonah. Under the last administration, some 4,700 or so megawatts was actually achieved, but obsolete infrastructure made nonsense of that. Exactly what is the missing link that we're not able to get it right as far as generation and distribution is concerned?
Well, the important thing I think a lot of people are not looking at is the transmission, the weakness in the transmission infrastructure. We have the capacity, the generating plants in Nigeria have the capacity to produce beyond the 4,700 or even the 5,000 megawatts that we're about having now. But that cannot, if the generating plants, if they improve or they increase their generation capacity or what the power they generate, it's difficult for the transmission system to fully absorb that today because it is weak. A lot of investment still requires to be put in. For instance, at the Odukpane power plant, which is in Cross River State, around Calabar there, I know that, look, a lot of power is being generated, but part of it cannot be evacuated. So that means that the power is effectively wasted. And it happens in a few power plants like that. Why is it so? Because the transmission infrastructure there was not completed. And I think part of the equipment that have just been ferried from the ports to help all these IPPs to get them up to speed. So we need to actually invest in that, in the transmission network, so that it can support what we already have on ground. But aside that, there is the need for a lot of the discos also to begin to take power directly from some of these plants, which I think some of them are actually doing. I know that Port Harcourt is doing it. I know a few other distribution companies are doing it, so that we don't solely rely on the transmission company of Nigeria, which can actually experience system failure as we have seen now, and that will now begin to negatively impact the country. So, but added to that, we must also look at a situation whereby we don't just have a national or a transmission system. we can have a regional transmission system that even if there's a failure nationally, at the regional level, that is still working. So a situation of lumping everything together is affecting us right now, and I think that we should begin to look at building this kind of systems that can exist and still function when you have the national systems collapse.
All right, Jonah, you just took that out of my mouth, because I was going to ask if this national grid system is working or is effective, but we'll come back to that certainly. I'd like Kayode to also talk about that. But let's go on a break. We'll come back to dwell on this. Stay with us.
All right, you're welcome back. We're looking at the dwindling fortunes of Nigeria's power sector. And the real problem is generation and, of course, distribution. But our guest in Port Harcourt says the missing link may just be transmission. But we're looking at all of that. Kayode Ekundayo is a publisher with Energy Times, and Jonah Iboma is former corporate communications of the Port Harcourt Electricity Distribution Company. Now, he talked about over-centralization of the power energy sector, the need to begin to look at possibly regional power grids as a solution to this problem. And of course, you talked about focusing on beaming the searchlight on GENCO's and DISCO's activities. Talk to us about that.
Actually, what you have said has been identified in Lagos. For instance, early this year, I know Ikeja Disco and Eko Disco had an agreement with Egbe. And you know Egbe is an offshoot of Ikeja Disco. It's owned by the same company.
Okay.
Now, they dedicated 100 megawatts to feed the two of them. Now, I can tell you, as I'm speaking with you, that 100 megawatts has been suspended.
Why?
Why that is so, I don't know. But what everybody will say is due to lack of gas. Now, I can tell you again that within the last 1 week, our generation has dropped to 2,640. Within last week, 2,640. Why? They will attribute it to gas. Now, it's not that these power plants are not generating. They are generating far, far below their capacity. Now, you should ask, why is it this? To me, and as I said earlier, government should not put too much pressure on this issue of gas. Government should investigate the GENCOs and the DISCOs.
You think there's more to it than
there is more to it. There is more to it, and I will explain. The two of them have placed advert in the newspaper, saying that government is owing. And there was a time even the minister was so annoyed that they want to throw the whole country into darkness. Now, if you look at what is going on now, you can easily deduce that something like that is going on. Right now, even today, I'm not sure whether anybody has light. And we cannot say categorically this is the cause of this. It's true that bombing is going on in the Niger Delta, but it's not that all the pipelines have been blown off. There are still gas. I remember early in April when we had Fokado gas line destroyed. We were still getting light, and at that time we were generating 3,000. At a point we were generating 2, because we knew that is a major gas pipeline. But right now, truly, what happened yesterday, but that does not mean that the whole system should collapse. Right now, the system has collapsed, and government should look beyond, as I said, the gas issue.
Supply of gas.
Yes, they should either they have meeting with the GENCO and DISCO and solve the problem of their debt, or investigate beyond gas and look at what is the cause of this problem.
From what you're saying, it looks like there's a sabotage going on.
Yes, that's what I'm suspecting.
All right.
But
Okay,
of course,
we'll
we've heard
back.
that government is owing some 800 billion.
That's so much.
Naira.
So much.
Yeah.
We'll come back to this. Now, Nigeria's power generation capacity continues to waver between 1,000 megawatts and 5,000 megawatts, much lower than that of South Africa, with far less population than Nigeria.
The power sector is plagued with issues of gas shortage, pipeline vandalism, inadequate funding, unprofitable prices and corruption. Many Nigerians have had to resort to alternative means of getting electricity, but despite their hardship, they still find time to spawn jokes about the former state electricity company's name. The acronym NEPA was nicknamed Never Expect Power Always. And when its name was changed to the Power Holding Company of Nigeria a decade ago, they mocked it as the problem has changed names.
Has changed names.
PHCN.
And that's due to continuous power failure. What Nigerians will always, one way or the other, find a way to make themselves happy in the midst of all of this. But the Vice President, Yemi Osinbajo, is not deterred by the challenges in the power sector. He told businessmen in Nnewi, Anambra State in the southeast of the country, that the federal government would address the issue of power and forex. And the big question then is, how and when? Let's give you some more information.
So Nigeria's energy mix is currently dominated by hydro, which is water, and thermal, of course that is gas. But the country is yet to stabilize on 5,000 megawatts made worse by activities of pipeline vandals.
The Niger Delta provides not only the bulk of the nation's crude oil exports, but also the gas that powers some of her power plants, such as Egbe that we talked about earlier on. Out of 6 turbines, 3 lie idle at the Egbe plant, starved of gas supply.
Electricity distribution companies complain that they are owed huge sums of money, and this is negatively affecting service delivery and maintenance. Now, power distribution is the main revenue-generating arm of the power chain, and discos are faced with mounting debt from both individual and corporate customers, like government ministries. According to the Association of Nigerian Electricity Distributors, total market revenue shortfalls were projected to be somewhere around 809 billion naira by December 2016.
Right, the Transmission Company of Nigeria attained a new record peak generation of 5,074 megawatts and highest maximum daily energy wheeled nationwide in February. Data from the Transmission Company of Nigeria revealed that Nigeria's electricity generation dropped by more than 740 megawatts from the 4,202 megawatts recorded in September to 3,462 megawatts. Now, let me bring in Jonah in here from our Port Harcourt studio. Now, they talked about the power companies are talking about debts owed by individuals and even corporate entities and even government ministries and so on. Now, when it comes to payment and strategies to getting all these debts back, what are the challenges in that regard? Can you give us some enlightenment there?
Yeah, there are lots of challenges actually in terms of trying to recover the debts owed by customers. That includes government, corporate entities, and individuals. First of all, if we start with the everyday customer, there is the unwillingness by many electricity users to pay for electricity. Why? Because they feel, okay, the power is not regular. They also feel sometimes that even when you have the power, it doesn't come in the required quality that they deserve. Sometimes also there are complaints on estimation that the bills are crazy. Aside that, in places like the Niger Delta, in a place like the Niger Delta here, you have agitators that are saying, look, what are we benefiting from the federal government? Power, gas, all those things they are taking from the Niger Delta. And this, since we are not getting much from the government, we think we should begin to enjoy power free of charge. So all these are actually working towards making it difficult for distribution companies to collect monies from customers. And it's a big problem. That's why today you see that distribution companies are recording collection losses in the neighborhood of 55–60%. And except this is tackled, the problem cannot be the issue of indebtedness will remain a huge challenge. Now, added to this is the fact that government agencies, ministries, departments, and agencies, many of them, for upward 2 years, they don't even pay for power. They take power, they don't pay. And these debts, they are written in the books of the distribution companies. And once the distribution companies cannot get money, how can they pay transmission? How can they pay generation company? How can they pay the CBN, that puts together some facility for them to be able to come into the, provide power to customers? So it's a huge issue. So I think advocacy must continue on one hand to enlighten customers so that they can pay for electricity they use. That's one. Two, government agencies, ministries and departments, they must know that they have to pay for their power, because it is the power, it is the money that is gotten from the system, or that is got from the system, that will be used to service the entire industry. If distribution companies cannot collect money, I tell you, the entire industry will be in a serious problem.
Yes, it's a case of which one comes first, the chicken or the egg. If you don't pay, how do you expect to get electricity? And then the consumer says, well, we don't get electricity, why should we pay in the first place? Now, still talk about the issue of tariff, that some have described as a moving target. The cost-reflective tariff system, you want to enlighten us on that and how it, plays out vis-a-vis some of the factors that, issues that were factored in when the DISCOs and GENCOs were reaching the agreement with government at the time when they actually took over. It's 3 years now since privatization, and some are wondering, has privatization actually failed?
Well, I don't think the privatization has failed, because you have a situation whereby greater efficiency. The system is far more efficient now. Take the old PACN, the old NEPA. You had obviously over-bloated workforce. Today, the workforce has been trimmed. And so you see that the companies are run much more professionally. Not only that, professionals have been brought in. The manpower has improved. And response to customer needs, response to customer agitation, response time now has improved drastically. And you can see that there's a lot of communication between distribution companies, even transmission companies sometimes, and the public. And so we know reasons why there are power outages. We know reasons why there's challenges in the network. What needs to happen now is there should be more advocacy in terms of informing customers on the need for them to pay their bills, because it is when their bills are paid that the system can improve. And then government also must move beyond the rhetoric, move beyond saying, okay, we are supporting the industry, and ensure that it pays its bills. The ministries, the department, the agencies, they must pay their bills, including the legacy debts, including the debts they owed for the past 3, 4, 5 years, some of which have not been paid. Once this happens, I tell you that the system will improve. I believe that there are many investors today that are putting money into the system and into the energy industry, and they are asking themselves, are you sure I've actually taken the right decision? And there are others that are also looking at it that, look, if I'm invited to put money into the energy sector, the electricity sector today, will I really want to put money there, considering the enormity of problems that the sector is grappling with? So we still have government, we still need government to intervene, to help distribution companies, help the transmission company to inform the public on the need for them to own up to their responsibility, to pay their bills, and the need also for them to allow electricity workers to do their job. A situation whereby linesmen are being beaten up, where marketers are being beaten up, this cannot allow to continue. Otherwise, the system will not improve. So government on one hand still has a lot of work to do.
All right.
Distribution companies, transmission companies, even generation companies, they have a lot of work to do. Okay. The Regulatory Commission also must do something.
All right, Jonah, thank you. We'll still come back to you on this. Let's go on the break, and we'll come back still to dwell on more other aspects of our discussion. Stay with us. Right, if you're just joining us, you're watching TVC Breakfast, and we are discussing the declining power supply in Nigeria, and we've been looking at what the challenges are and what can be done. We have in our Port Harcourt studio Jonah Iboma, and we have Kayode Ekundayo with us here in the studio. Now, Kayode, let me come to you on this. We used to have the NEPA, the National Electricity Power Authority.
I thought you were going to say never expect power always.
No, in this case. So after the privatization and the private companies came in, Nigerians expected that by now, because from all the promises, from all the projections, by now, just like it was done in the telecoms, companies would have taken over and there would have been a revolution in the power sector. Now that is not so.
No, it can't be so.
It can't be so.
No,
So does it mean that the companies did not have the capacity,
No.
didn't have what it takes?
No, you see, you can't compare telecommunication with power sector.
Why not?
Power sector is something that is not something you hold, and it requires a lot of investment before now. And before now, the system.
Private companies came in. Nigerians expected that by now, because from all the promises, from all the projections, by now, just like it was done in the telecoms, companies would have taken over and there would have been a revolution in the power sector. Now that is not so.
No, it can't be so.
It can't be so.
No,
So does it mean that the companies did not have the capacity, didn't have what it takes?
No, you see, you can't compare telecommunication with power sector.
Why not?
Power sector is something that is not something you hold, and it requires a lot of investment before now. And before now, the system has been neglected. Before the President Obasanjo came to power, has been neglected for more than 25 years. Now, President Obasanjo came. We started having NIPP. Under that NIPP, we have 10 power plants that today they are capable of generating over 2,500 megawatts. Now, if you look at the other power stations we are talking about, Igbi, and other power stations that we have in existence, no maintenance was going on. And even look at distribution companies. They were only under NEPA. And as he said, you know that there was no efficiency. Now, the system we were having at that time is not the same way we have it at this time. For instance, the economy was not as, can we say, bad as it was at that time and now. The forex at that time was not at the same thing we have in the past and we have it now. To me, privatization has not failed. The only thing we could do is to be patient. I won't rule out the people bought these companies. I wouldn't rule out. But I think the mistake some of them made was that they didn't carry out due diligence of these companies before they went into
so
it.
So they underrated the challenges.
They underrated the challenges, and unfortunately, even the BP didn't look at the. Unfortunately, I may be wrong. They didn't look at the capabilities of this company that acquires some of these companies. They were looking at the money that was used to bid for them. You know, they give it to highest bidder, not the people who have the ability or capability to manage that. So there could be problem in that, but we can never rule them out that they are not. But they gain. Before now, when we have telecom, it took them 10 years to get to where they are. I remember the first GSM I bought 35,000 naira.
Oh yeah, I bought mine.
Today, a SIM card is a free of charge to people.
Yes, indeed.
5 years ago, wasn't the same thing. But today, we could see how things, they were, in fact, there are some communities that we don't even have it today, that they are still having network problems. So, to me, it's a gradual process. We will get there, just 3 years.
Okay, if you say so, we hope so. But former, is it the managing director of the power sector, Nebo, Minister of Power, actually said there are evil forces that will just not let power be in Nigeria. And there's been talk about this cabal that nobody seems to know, that insists that Nigerians will continue to buy generators and spend trillions and trillions of naira buying generators. But
all right,
let's
play you this report. Members of the Senate Committee on Privatization say there has been no significant improvement in the power sector performance 3 years after privatization.
Now, this was the conclusion as the committee led by its chairman, Ben Murray Bruce, toured distribution companies and power stations in Lagos. Details in this report.
When the government handed the power sector over to private investors in November of 2013, it was to meet the yearnings of millions of Nigerians who had truly believed that the sector would be better managed without government interference. But 3 years on, the consensus is that the sector remains bogged down by the same level of non-performance that has held it down for decades. And this seems to be the same complaint from the Senate Committee on Privatization on this oversight visit.
We want to hear for ourselves across the value chain what the problem is. We need to understand what it is. There are many schools of thought. Do we cancel the privatization process? Do we change the privatization process? What do we do to fix the problem? Ultimately, the public, the taxpayers must have power. The privatized companies must make a profit, and the government must look good. If the government does not look good, then they cannot survive. So you have three problems, and these problems must be addressed.
For the investors, the challenges remain the same, and trying to fix them has become even more daunting. According to them, the Senate needs to assist them break the cycle of non-performance.
We were promised power of about 5,750 megawatts daily. That's what we were told. We all went to the bank and sought loans and got loans and used what was in those agreements to get the revenue or the money to pay for these discos. But from day one, power was never at 5,700. For a very long time, the highest we got was about 7% of what we were supposed to get. So from day one, the agreements were 40.
But when we go back to the floor of the Senate, we need to explain to the Senate and to the Nigerian people what we have seen, what we have done, and what direction we think privatization should take on one hand, and two, how do we solve this power problem?
As Nigerians expect some level of positive activity to justify the faith in the private sector, one thing is sure: the era of finger-pointing has effectively ended.
Okay, how do we solve the power problem? Very good question from Brian Murray Bruce there. Now, to Jonah, the power private operators have blamed government for not meeting their own side of the agreement. And then there is a question of whether there is a possibility that some of these private operators may actually be holding government by the jugular. Should there be some kind of exit clause to ensure compliance on the part of these operators?
Well, I think the agreement actually already has, it's called a performance agreement. So that means that there are minimum requirements that the distribution companies are expected actually to meet. So, but at the same time, you must know that it is not just for distribution companies to meet those requirements. Government also said it will meet it, so it will provide some incentives or provide some things that are needed for the distribution companies to function. Unfortunately, up to this point in time, 3 years after the privatization, even government has not met its own minimum provision. 3 years down the line now, we are still grappling with less than 4,000 megawatts. So there is no way that we can actually say, okay, distribution companies should perform when what is required for them to perform is really not there. As you know, the companies that bought the Yola Electricity Distribution Company, due to the Boko Haram insurgency, they had to exit. So that was because of, circumstances beyond their control. So truly, yes, a distribution company has exited the system because of factors beyond its control. But need to actually see how they can manage the situation so that they can deliver best possible services to Nigeria, while government on its own will be working, I believe, and it's continuously working towards ensuring that more power is available, towards ensuring that the finance is also available for the system to stabilize so that customers can actually have the services. I believe that DISCOs, GENCOs, and government, there's need to further sit down to carve out possibilities, to carve out what I might even describe even a new agreement on what is actually possible. Because the expectations, the government had, all that were contained, most of what was contained in the initial performance agreement, a lot of it, I mean, it looks a little bit, it looks unreasonable now.
All right,
Imagine
Jonah.
that some of the power plants are just getting some of their equipment.
All right, Jonah. Jonah, thank you very much for joining us on TVC Breakfast. I must thank you.
Thank you so
All
much.
right, let's come back to you, Kayode. As we round off now, we have seen that report that the Senate took a tour of some of the, as a way of carrying out the oversight function, looking at what is obtainable there. When it comes to the agreements and legal framework, do you think they should go back to the drawing board to see how they can
Yes, actually I agree with them. You see, the system is faulty right from beginning. What the BP told Nigerians at the inception of the acquisition of these firms was that if any of the discos or gencos fail to perform below certain scoring points, they will take over the management of that company with 10 naira, 10 kobo. That's the amount they use. I don't know what that 10 kobo meant, but the scoring now, I don't really know how they have scored them. BP has visited virtually all the newly acquired firms, and anytime BP management goes into any of that, they tell us that they are doing well, and we have not actually seen the scoring performance of each of these companies. So until when BP comes out and tell us this is the scoring, but right now, honestly, they are not meeting the expectation because of the challenges they are facing.
Okay.
And I can tell you, the gas shortages and the bombing in the Niger Delta, yes, it could be an additional challenge. But again, as I said, government should look critically at the challenges being faced by these people to know whether it's a problem or not.
Okay, yes. Kayode Ekundayo, publisher, Energy Times, we want to say thank you so much for being a part of TVC Breakfast this Tuesday. And of course, Jonah Iboma, former corporate communications officer of the Port Harcourt Electricity Distribution Company. Thank you so much for being a part of the show.
Now, this is where we come to the end of today's edition of the program. We must thank you for spending your morning with us. Tomorrow will be time for us to dwell on other things. We couldn't discuss the rail system we talked about, we promoted earlier on, but we'll look for another time to talk about it and bring you information and understanding as to that. I am Mike Okwache. You can also follow me on Twitter for updates on issues across the country on at @Okwache TVC. Have a great day ahead.
Okay. And at Ngozi Alebu is where you can follow me on Twitter. And that's how it's been today. Thank you so much. Let's do it again tomorrow. Bye now.